So we are excited about today's program. So to begin our program, I am going to welcome past President John Yates, our partner at Gunderson Detmer, to the podium to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, President Kathy. So I'm very pleased today to introduce our speaker, Dan Kurtzakov, the CEO of the Big Green Egg. And Ed Fisher, it's great to have you here today, too. I promise that you're going to enjoy this presentation. Now, it's interesting that as we look around, and first of all, with a speaker that's involved with a very interesting utensil, let's find out, first of all, a little bit of a survey in the audience. So who in the audience owns a big green egg? Please raise your hand. Let the record reflect, that's pretty amazing. For those of you that don't own a big green egg, how many of you want to buy a big green egg? All right, let the record reflect. I know Bill Todd. Where are you, Bill? Bill, you don't own just one or two or three. You own 5 big green eggs. So congratulations to you, Bill. So I thought, how do you introduce a program? What's the right title for a program where you're introducing the CEO of the famous outdoor cooking device, and probably the most famous outdoor cooking device, let's say, in the world? So the first one that came to mind was basically firing up success, a conversation with the Big Green Egg CEO. Now, Dan's career path, however, has been something more than traditional. Maybe you call it untraditional. He's worked at a lot of startups, nonprofits, and some of the largest companies in the U.S. and internationally. So that track record might suggest a different title. Maybe it should be From Backyard to Boardroom, the Big Green Egg Story. All right, well, that's a pretty good title. But before joining the Big Green Egg in 2023 as the third CEO, Dan was a senior advisor at McKinsey, focused on the future of food and restaurants. Now, if you could get a title, you'd want to be involved with the future of food and restaurants for McKinsey. You can only imagine what's involved. He's also been the chief commercial officer and global chief marketing officer at Focus Brands, and before that, the chief marketing and digital officer for the largest McDonald's franchisees in the world. So that kind of global brand marketing might suggest a different title. Maybe that'd be Smoking Strategies, How the Big Green Egg Built a Global Brand, because it really is a global brand. But wait, there's more. Before all that food industry experience, Dan was an early executive at Google, helping Latin America and the Google operations to launch new advertising businesses. But it makes you wonder, why would a Google executive who was involved in search algorithms move over to ceramic cookers? So for that mystery, maybe today's session should be called, Which Came First, the Big Green Chicken or the Big Green Egg? And then there's life outside of work. And Dan has some very interesting avocations outside of work. He's a former semi-pro rugby player. Any other former semi-pro rugby players in the audience? Well, that's a unique qualification. He's an avid CrossFitter, an amateur kickboxer, and a passionate student of how cultures around the world cook over live fire. We had a great introduction here with respect to the importance of fire as well. And he displays those qualities as well on a YouTube channel. It's called Road to 50 Cuisines, and I think Dan's going to tell us a little bit more about that. So that kind of energy and experience and enthusiasm suggests maybe a different title, From Charcoal to Charisma, the Big Green Egg CEO Live. We're going to hear him live in just a moment. But Dan's also a fellow at the Culinary Institute of America, a senior advisor to the James Beard Foundation, and serves on multiple boards. So maybe the best title is Exceptional Leadership on the Grill. So please join me in welcoming the sizzling hot, charcoal-broiled, green eggs and ham CEO of the Big Green Egg, Dan Kurtzakov.
Wow, okay, let's see where we go from here. Let me move on here. So, I want to thank Rotary for the invitation. I want to thank both John and Kathy and all of you. I mean, this is quite an honor. As somebody who's relatively new to Atlanta and relatively new to this role as well, I said, well, what if I want to set roots as a business leader, as a civic leader in Atlanta, what's the group that I need to be at? And that answer was Rotary, and specifically this Rotary Club. So congratulations to all of you here today for building this community and this fellowship, as was so eloquently expressed in the opening remarks. This is a bit, we'll go on to the next slide, a bit of a how to quickly or briefly summarize a little bit about me, but more importantly about the company and how did this company that's 51 years old, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, how did this become, as you referenced, such a cult part of people's lives? And while I will do my best to express that, we do have Ed here, who's the man who started it all 51 years ago. It's really an honor not only to continue on your tradition, but also to have you here. So another round for Ed. Thank you. So I am the third CEO in 51 years, with Ed being the first and the person who retired before me. And it quite takes on a mantle of leadership. His story and the story of this company, I won't be one of the 3 videos that I shared today, but I'll invite you all for our 50th anniversary. We made literally a documentary about the founding of Big Green Egg, and I'd encourage you all to check it out on YouTube. But it tells a story of entrepreneurship. It tells a story of Ed in 1974 hanging up a shingle of a lone retail store, probably 10 miles from here, within the city of Atlanta limits, to sell what at the time were pachinko pinball machines. And that was the genesis of Big Green Egg, was more a genesis around that, really having a downstairs basement, living room area, leisure room for your family. And the Big Green Egg, or the Kamado Grill, wasn't yet named the Big Green Egg, was one of the things that was brought over on those containers from Japan. And what's interesting about the Big Green Egg story, and here you see that storefront here, and as I made reference, is that it didn't, as I described, it really was the consumers who came in and tried the food off the Big Green Egg, or at the time, just the Kamado, and said, I'm not sure about that pinball machine, but how do I get one of those Kamado cookers? And in response to that answer, Ed, as any entrepreneur would, pivoted to where the opportunity was and slowly transitioned out of pachinko and renamed the company Big Green Egg. And from there, it's taken on a life of its own, really, through a lot of his own hard work and a lot of effort from 50 countries around the world. So I'm going to tell in 3 videos a bit why personally, my own personal story, and then secondarily what the company's focused on. So how do you set a company that's been around for 50 years up for the next 50 years of growth and of leadership? So the first slide, if you pull it up, and don't play the PowerPoint just yet. I'm trying to do this in 3 brief videos. It's a big group, intimidating. I thought better for a home cast video. That's literally my wife as a video editor here. This was a video that I put up in the first 3 months after I joined Big Green Egg to try to get talent into the organization. Now, we had a talented team, but a team, and this is part of other things we may talk about in our Q&A, that wasn't signed up for the mission of the next, it's kind of the team that got us there. We needed some new talent on the team for the direction we wanted to go, specifically around product innovation. So what I've done here, a little preface to this, is why would somebody who's worked in different industries decide to get into Big Green Egg? I try to answer that question here. And secondarily, what did I focus on in my first months as CEO was around the core product and trying to attract talent to the organization. So with my wife, literally that is my backyard and my mini Max there, with my wife as the video editor, let me try to explain this 2 years ago of why I joined Big Green Egg and what kind of talent we need to rebuild for the next 50 years of the company. Let's go ahead and run the video. Hi, I'm Dan. I'm the president of Big Green Egg, and I am looking for an exceptional product leader, and I hope that person is you. I won't bore you with my background. Check me out on LinkedIn. I'll just talk about 3 reasons what attracted me to join the Big Green Egg, and I hope those are some of the same reasons that may attract you to it. First, I started off my career 25, 30 years ago as a social entrepreneur. I started a nonprofit in Latin America. Big Green Egg is a purpose-driven company, and the ability to be part of that attracted me. The second part of my career, and the second reason why I joined Big Green Egg, is that I worked at Google, I worked at a fintech, venture-backed companies. This is a rejuvenation of an iconic brand. It's been around for 50 years. It'll be around for another 50 or 100 years, and I want to set the trajectory path for that growth. And third and finally, the last part of my career has been about food and restaurants. And this cooking vessel has been around for thousands of years, a Kamado grill. It's one of the most perfect cooking vessels for ceramics, and we can make it better. I need somebody to help me think about the core product, think about our accessories, think about our charcoal, and really think about gathering family, friends, and neighbors around live fire. We've been doing it for hundreds of thousands of years. And as we're more connected to our phones, we're less connected to our family, friends, and neighbors, and I want to change that. I hope you can join me on this adventure. So that video and the story helped us attract somebody who was a 30-year product leader, living in San Diego, California, never worked outside, worked globally, but always based in San Diego, uprooted his wife, moved cross-country to Atlanta, and started on his own, and now an 8-person product and innovation team to come out with what the first products are now a year and a half later that are hitting your local Ace Hardware or local barbecue specialty. You'll see some new accessories, and then for next year, some really exciting innovation. So it tells a little bit of the, I guess, the hustle that you have to take, even if you've been in your career for quite a while, to try to attract that kind of talent, and I'm happy with the results and the team that we built as a result. You'll have 2 of my team members are here, so in the Q&A, if you don't catch me, you can catch, there's Michelle, who leads our marketing, also new to the company. Thank you, Michelle, and Hal Boyd. I saw Hal over here as well, who leads our talent and culture team as well. So there is a new, about the company is about 50 people. About half of those people have less than a year and a half. So we've been able to both graduate some folks new to the team and also celebrate some folks that were maybe not in the right seat for the journey that we had ahead. And that's been part of this turnaround, has been that change management. Now, I said a couple things I wanted to set up the next slide, if you can move on to the next slide, and before we do the video. I said 2 things in my little pitch there. One was what it means to be a purpose-driven company and why that attracted me. And it was a second around our purpose, around gathering family, friends, and neighbors. So let me talk about the purpose-driven piece, because this is one of the things that's really unique about Big Green Egg, and really about Ed and his some of his motivation and legacy that he'll be leaving behind. We defined being a purpose-driven company at Big Green Egg in 3 ways. The first is around articulating a purpose. And so we talked about gathering family, friends, and neighbors to cook over live fire. I made reference to that supposed connection device that we have in our pockets, and we've been more connected as individuals and never less connected as a community. And I think food has always been that spot to bring people together. So there's having a purpose, and that's necessary but not sufficient. The second is how you run the company. So we made a decision within Big Green Egg of a series of stakeholders that we would put action plans against, clearly around our shareholder. And in this case, Ed is our one and only shareholder, has been that way for 50 years. We have made a lot of changes to the company to be able to improve our financial stability. That's one stakeholder group. We also made a commitment around the communities where we operate. Now, Big Green Egg has always been involved, and I know has been involved in some of the community groups that are here today. We made a decision to narrow our focus so that we can have a bigger impact on charities that have a food-related mission, because that's related to our mission. Part of our move is to move beyond philanthropy and move into strategic investments in our community. And that has to do with food, gathering of communities, knowing where your food comes from, and finally, food in moments of crisis, which is so crucial in many crises that we've faced. So that's a second piece, is how you run your company. Also, the sustainability. We did an audit of our carbon footprint, of the ceramics, and we're going to expand that into charcoal, and just how you run your company has a purpose. And finally, and this is a reflection of Ed and his legacy, is the equity structure of our company. So Ed has had, over the last 51 years, multiple opportunities to sell the company, especially during the pandemic. It was a hot moment for lots of these companies, and all of the companies in the top 10 of brands were sold, bought, fused, went public, private equity, every single one of them, with Big Green Egg as the exception. Our company will be owned by a foundation. The model that we're following and the tax code that we're following was established by Paul Newman from Newman's Own. And Patagonia is another company. And other companies you may not know, also owned by foundations, Rolex, Hershey's, Hormel. There's multiple companies you may not know about that have this model where the profits get reinvested in the communities where we operate. And that will be Big Green Egg's model going forward. And it's really a testament to Ed to be able to make that commitment and us be able to execute on those three pillars of what it means to be a purpose-driven company. The final thing around gathering, what I'm about to show you, and this is Michelle's work that I'm going to brag on, is our first ever brand advertising campaign. Big Green Egg did grow word of mouth for 51 years. And really in the last 15 years, I would say, really accelerated. So people, oh, you have a Big Green Egg, I want a Big Green Egg, and it grew that way. That next generation is been missing. They have other options today that they didn't have 10 years ago. Now there are 3 pizza ovens and 4 pellet grills and 5 knockoffs from every country around the world. We needed to step up and say something about the brand. And what you're going to see here is a statement around values and pick up on some of the cues that key in on what our strategy is going forward. So we can play that video.
Strange things happen when you cook over fire. Family members suddenly emerge from their dwelling. Newcomers arrive with offerings of peace and goodwill. Laughter erupts while children go unattended. And then at last, the ritual clinking of celebration vessels. Big Green Egg, if you cook over fire, they will come.
So, Michelle, great work. So, like any marketer, you pick up on the cues. You didn't see a picture. I love brisket and pork butt and all the great things you can smoke on a Big Green Egg. The food that we featured was skewers and vegetables and fish and other things that you can cook on a Big Green Egg. Part of redefining, making the brand tent bigger is kind of rethinking that this isn't only if I want to stay up all night, cooking, that I can also get food out on a Tuesday night. Now, we didn't say that, but that's what we showed implicitly. Part of our beliefs are people don't aspire for the grill. They aspire for those moments with their family. They aspire for their kids running around the backyard, primarily unattended. They aspire for having a neighbor that they know. These are bigger issues you'd think a grill company would have anything to do with, but it's what we have everything to do with. And that's what our company's been about for 51 years and will be about for the next 50 years. So there's cues in that advertising. We didn't talk about the features and how hot it gets and how to light it and whether the lifetime warranty, which it has, by the way, we didn't talk about that in the advertising. We talked about the community and the lifestyle that you'd be joining by purchasing one of these products. So that's a second, and to give you an idea of where our company is going, it is going in the direction of talking more about gathering and the need to gather in this moment, and versus what are you going to cook? We'll talk further down the funnel on what to cook on it. First thing is what's the why behind it? What's the belief system behind it? And that's what we've leaned into as a company. I'm happy to I'm going to kind of pause there. There's a lot I've left out about the history of Big Green Egg and how it got started, and I'm happy to answer all of that in Q&A, but I wanted to keep this brief, so I'm going to give you one last tidbit, which is just a fact you did not need to know about me, but also as somebody who's trying to have a larger voice and to try to inspire others or try to help others in their community, in their paths. I decided about 6 months ago to share a little bit of my journey with an interest in cooking, made reference to it. When I was 14 years old, I thought I wanted to be a chef. And instead, as I was applying to college, I applied to culinary school. And my mom, being the more conservative, said, well, just go to college and then you can go to culinary school. And when I was coming out of college, I applied for that Fulbright and applied to culinary school again. And in this case, in Thailand. I was obsessed and still am with Thai food. And when I took my Fulbright a year later, I realized if I don't go and scratch this itch of should I have been a chef, it'll be one of those regrets. And I knew at an early age I didn't want to have any regrets. So I went to Thailand. I spent 2 months in culinary school. And there I realized that I didn't need to be a chef to be able to travel and learn about food. So I set a goal in 1998 to try to learn 50 cuisines. I thought it would take me 50 years. I'd take one vacation a year. I'd go to a place and learn about about food. You can imagine a few years later seeing Anthony Bourdain. It was like, he's got the same idea I've got. He's way better at it. But I started doing this on my own as a hobby. And about maybe 5 years ago, I said, I should have been capturing content. And so I was sitting on a bunch of these videos or the content behind those videos, and I just started publishing them. I think today our 6th video goes. This is the intro, so this gives you a little bit of an idea of what this journey is about. And I share this because it may or may not be applicable, but I think it is to a group of business and civic leaders of how your passions, your interests, how you show up outside the office also can touch and inspire others within the office. And this passion, which is, I spend 2 hours a week on this, but it's something that continues to be a passion that is a reflection of who I am and why I decided to join this kind of company as well. So we'll go ahead and play that.
I'm Dan Gertzkov. I set a bucket list goal 25 years ago to use my holidays to travel and learn 50 cuisines from around the world. The goal was then, and still is now, to learn about culture through food. Join me to explore the foods, sights, and sounds from different countries around the world. Everyone needs a life quest. This is mine. Let's go.
So everyone needs a life quest. I'm sure many in this room have their own. This is mine. And I'm proud of, I'm going to stick with my branding, but I did hit my 50th cuisine just this past month. So I have, and like any type A personality shared by many of this in this room, I've reset my goal to 100 cuisines. So I am on my way to 100 cuisines over the next, hopefully 50 years as well. So with that, I invite any question about on the personal, professional side that may be resonating. I'm happy to cover it. Thank you again for the invitation and the privilege to be here today.
So Dan, thank you for that very, very interesting background. Couple initial questions that come to mind. First of all, the use of video. I don't know how many CEOs in the audience actually use video or they use themselves in the video. How effective has that been, and how much planning has to go into that? Because obviously it's a unique way to be able to tell the brand and tell the story.
Yeah, I think it is very much a mantra around progress over perfection. So you can see my wife videotaping one. A lot of what was shot in that other one was me and an iPhone. So there's not much production crew, and that's okay. That authenticity is what resonates, especially with the younger generation. I've also found, and I did some work on this in between Google and getting in the restaurant industry, that the social media algorithms are set up around this dopamine rush, right? Of did somebody share it? Did somebody like it? And my personal decision of doing this was that I would refuse to look at it and get that dopamine rush. So when somebody does say, hey, I saw what you posted on LinkedIn, I'm like, yes, somebody saw it. Because I try not to, and it's hard because they've designed it to get you into this cycle of, clicking the next and the next. I decided to just put it out there. And then I've done this series that you're seeing, you referenced here, on my own LinkedIn. I've started a career recipe. I have about 35 videos that talk about hiring or talk about talent retention, how to let people go with grace and empathy, how to build culture. I've tried to cover topics, and my only decision there was one take. So I said, we had the video guy there. In this case, it was videoed. And I said, whatever it is, however it comes out, we're going with it. And if I couldn't be authentic and reflect my voice in that video, then it wasn't worth publishing. And so I think that I would encourage other CEOs, even if you're not, I'm not naturally want to be in social media and get obsessed with it. I'm disinterested in it. But I had to overcome that because I do think our company needs the visibility. I'm a reflection of that company. If I can attract one more talented person, but they said, that CEO actually, he seems has a different playbook than other CEOs. If any of that makes a difference, I owe that to the company. And I think that this authenticity around food, we made that one of our core values, that cooking is an act of love. If I wasn't leading that, if I wasn't embodying that in my own home, in my own passions, in my own energy, I wasn't being inauthentic to the core values of the company.
So it's really interesting. By the way, if anybody does videos and you can do it on one take, that is a very challenging thing, but it obviously shows a lot of genuine focus. You have used video also for not just sort of lessons about the brand, but as you pointed out, other things. I actually listened to a couple of them, and part of it too was talking about your strategy, and I think you had a sort of a bus analogy. Walk us through that, because I thought it was interesting, and if you're looking for examples of how to use video to communicate messaging to your team, Dan's done a good job of it. Tell us about the bus.
So this is something that I've been through kind of three turnaround type situations of, in the first was with McDonald's, which is an iconic brand. This is in the early 2000s, was kind of trying to up against a, supersize me criticism. And in Latin America, that was starting to impact. So that was the first time. And the second time when it came up for focus brands and the Cinnabons and Jamba Juices of the world and getting challenged. And now here finally at Big Green Egg. And the analogy goes like this, which is very straightforward. What's the direction of the bus? Where are we going? Because that's an important, not only to attract new talent, but for the existing, not only talent, but your suppliers, your vendors, your board, the press, the community. What is the direction that we're going? And is that a future that I want to be part of? Is that the destination I want to go? We have that, and I'll give you an example. We go to market the same way that Ed started going to market 51 years ago. We use distributors to go to dealers. Many of those distributors are as committed to Big Green Egg and representing our brand as they were on day one. We have a handful of distributors that have expressed to me, hey, we have a goal to 5x our business over the next 10 years. And we have the brand and the product and the team to do it. So this is an ambitious goal and one that's appropriate for where we sit in our industry. But I've had a couple of our distributors say, hey, I didn't sign up for that. That wasn't the amount of change required, how much I have to invest, the technology part, the supply chain part, how many more people I need to hire. That wasn't what this was. And I said, that's completely fair. And we can have an open conversation around how you can get an outcome so that somebody else can get on the bus to this destination. And so I think it's fair, it's authentic to have a reset with your existing employees, existing partners around the direction of the bus and spend a lot of time communicating it. The second piece of this bus analogy are what are the seats on that bus? And that's an organizational design question. It's what you decide to do versus what you decide to outsource. It's what within the team, does customer service sit under product or does it sit under marketing or does it sit under operations? It could sit under either. And how do you design the organization? We have we had an example of a very talented photographer on staff. Great guy, knew the brand, could do a ton of content. But we needed a full-time data analytics person. We didn't have the right seat on the bus. And we turned that seat into a freelance role and hired a full-time data analytics person. And that was not a talent issue on, in this case, his behalf. It was an org design decision that I made different than my predecessor. So there's a seats on the bus, which I think is the most crucial, and many times gets outsourced to a consultant or gets thought about in HR, but it's really a CEO decision on how you allocate resources, what you decide to do versus what you decide to outsource. The third, naturally, are the seats, the people that go in those seats. And then it comes down to talent. And we start first with the seat and then the person. We don't try to put a circle in a square because the person is super talented and we've got to find, there are moments for that, especially in startups where people can wear multiple hats. It's harder in bigger organizations where you need specialists in each role, and you also don't have time for people to be learning on your dime versus having done this and have some pattern recognition. And that's something I did learn moving from startups into bigger companies, that startup culture can sometimes be very detrimental to a larger organization because they don't have the same freedom and flexibility. They're not trying to do the same things. You have a product market fit already. You don't need to prove that out in a larger organization. You need to be able to bring people along on the journey, which is not exactly when you're trying to go from 0 to 1. You have a different set of challenges. So to repeat the bus analogy, direction of the bus, seats on the bus, and then people in those seats, and you continue to revise that strategy. Later this week, we're doing a touch base with our management team to make sure that location is still the right one, the seats are still the right one, and we've got the right people in those seats. So it's not you do it once and it's over. It's a continual process, more like fitness than it's like, of learning how to do any sport or practice any athletic discipline. It's the same. It comes from consistency, practice, and have a beginner's mindset.
That was an excellent response, by the way. So it's
well done.
So one of the things President Cathy's talked about is community, and Rich in his invocation talked about community. You talked about community. You've traveled the world. What's the perception of the Atlanta community, and how has it been something you've experienced? Obviously, you made some kind comments about the Rotary Club, but talk to us a little bit about community and what it means to you, and how you've felt hopefully welcomed by the Atlanta community.
Yeah, I feel Atlanta is I'm moving here, have found there's like a pre and post, like the people that got here in the mid to late 90s, it feels like the Olympics was a big turning point for this community, just as an outsider coming here. And the growth that's happened, both attracting people, investors, talent from the Southeast, and it's really the destination and the kind of the capital, if you will, of the Southeast. Now, I think Atlanta can and should have a bigger ambition because the talent, the companies, what the city's got to offer can be and is a first-rate Tier 1A city, not being the best of the Tier 2 cities. And I think Atlanta's got all of those elements to be considered that way. As an example, this conversation about bringing a product leader from San Diego to Atlanta, and people are like, why would they move from San Diego? It's perfect weather, it's perfect. He and his family have moved here, and they feel Atlanta is the perfect city that's got lakes and woods and easy access and a great airport and has all of these elements that it makes it a much more attractive city than a San Diego. I chose to come to Atlanta over moving to New York, and I had lived in New York. I love New York, great city, didn't want to bring up a family. Atlanta is a great place to bring up a family. We've got 2 teenage daughters. I couldn't imagine, if I could imagine another city to bring them up, I'd be living there. This is the city that we want to set roots, and I think that Atlanta's got a bigger role it's playing a bigger role than it gets credit for, both on a national stage and an international stage. I think the World Cup here next summer will be a big opportunity for Atlanta to, again, like the Olympics, be one of the primary hosts of a global event. And I, as a humble leader of this Atlanta born and raised company, we were talking with Cathy, what more can we do to tell the story of Big Green Egg and contribute to Atlanta being in the top, not U.S. cities, but consider what it is, one of the top global cities.
So we're going to open it up, I think, President Cathy, in just a moment to questions at the mic here, please, from members. But Dan, you've had a lot of experiences. You've been with startups, you've been with nonprofits, you've been with large companies, you've been in key roles. Talk to us a little bit about a mentor or mentors you've had and some leadership lessons. You've obviously integrated those into your videos as well.
Gosh, so there's a whole nother video series I should start. The mentors depend on the mentee. So mentors, there's a lot more people interested if they were to be engaged in a way that's constructive. And what do I mean by that is that it's up, I believe, to the person seeking out that support, one, to add value to the relationship. So I'm the one investing in sending articles, setting up time, having a cadence that makes sense. And for me, depending on the mentor, it could be every 6 to 8 weeks, it could be once a year, but I have a discipline and literally like a calendar set up to help me be a better mentee in order to be able to attract and retain, if you will, those mentors. And I have them from different stages and phases of my life. I count one of my first football and wrestling coaches as one of my, continue to this day, one of the people I most go to for life advice, not sports advice. And I think that that's the role that sports can play in somebody's life that teaches a lot of lessons outside of the sport itself. And then within the business community, I am a lifelong learner and dedicated to both giving and receiving. I respond to every response I get. I talked to, coming out of Harvard Business School, 150 alumni in order to try to find my first job. I'd started a nonprofit. I was trying to get into media and tech. 150 alumni. I probably stay in touch with 80, 100 of those people, and this was 25 years ago. And so I think that there is a continued add value to a relationship that makes a mentor-mentee relationship work and become a lifelong relationship that you can both prosper from.
Great. So opening up to Rotary members, if anybody wants to ask a question, please come to the mic. Dan, we talked a lot about community, and I really appreciate that. Dan and I also have something else in common. We are both members of the board of the Giving Kitchen. So could you talk a little bit about what the Giving Kitchen is and why you chose to participate?
So Giving Kitchen is an Atlanta-born and grown nonprofit who most recently, just now a couple of years ago, was recognized with the James Beard Philanthropy Award on a national level. So it is another case of an Atlanta company starting to get national recognition. It is there to support food service workers. There are 15 million food service workers in this country. At any one time, 70% of them could not handle a $500 surprise bill. 5% of those are in an emergency crisis situation in any given month, and that's around the country. So what happened as an homage now 15 years ago to an Atlanta chef who got sick and didn't have the funds to support his health recovery is now supporting not only health, but occupational situations, any crisis moment that a food service worker needs. And in Kathy's leadership and the board is intended on it becoming an Atlanta-based national organization that can attend to those needs of 15 million restaurant workers around the country.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm Zach Young from Wesleyan School. Tell me about the challenges and the benefits of running a company that can't offer stock to the employees as incentives, and the way it works for how you have to pay bonuses instead of giving stock at the end of the day to create generational wealth for your employees and you.
That's right. So great question, and that is something we as an organization, working with the board, and Ed chairs our board, we have worked through to be able to create this model. I think one of the things that you have to do, and there's kind of four components of compensation in the way that we look at it. One is the culture that you're creating, and that is a compensation, especially for today's talent. We just introduced, most companies are bringing people back into the office because they went too flex. We're just created a policy to let people work from home. We had been a company all in the office all the time, and the needs and the reality of traffic, as we all know, required us to make an adaptation. So before I talk about money, we talk about the culture. We started a program where every Wednesday, every employee in the company tries to cook together. Now, we have a warehouse. They can't cook every Wednesday, but we're incorporating that on a monthly basis. We have an office in Mexico. They're starting to do it. So really anchored at HQ, but it's around our values. So I'll put the culture and benefits on one side. The three other components, as you referenced, one is base salary, one is short-term incentive, and one is long-term incentive. So what we've done on base salary is benchmark compensation, which is not something we had been using in the past. So we now have an idea of where we sit compared to other talent or other organizations of our size. We introduced and tripled our short-term bonus pool. So we did have a bonus pool. It was just limited and wasn't, I would say, because of the seats on the bus conversation. As an example, our salespeople didn't have a very aggressive bonus pool. And I'd come from a sales culture, and I don't know a salesperson who doesn't live and feed off the commission structure. So we incorporated that into the design of our program. So that's a second component. And the final component you reference on long-term incentives, that is something that I think both private and public companies and the in-between, if you will, the private equity companies, say it's more kind of like they talk about it more than they do it. And I know this from private equity, having been there. There's a big offer of what could be, and sometimes very little follow through on what happens. Sometimes the same happens with public companies with being underwater, above water, what have you. What we've done is set up a long-term profit sharing for today our key execs and talent. I'm hoping that that's a program as we go forward, we're going to be able to expand that long-term profit sharing to a wider group of employees. So you've got all four components to attract that talent will help you get, in our case, 5X over the next 10 years. The benefits and culture, base, short-term, and long-term.
Thank you. So Dan, I want to ask you a question too. You've been to how many countries in the world?
About 30 countries, 51 cuisines.
Okay, and right now, a lot of us have traveled internationally, and one of the observations is how are people viewing the United States now? Obviously, there have been some issues out there. You have real-time experience. I think you said you've been on the road 40 days straight?
40 days in the last 45, yeah.
Okay, so that's a lot of other countries. Just what's your observation right now, and how has it changed about meeting with people over food?
I think that's a great way to answer it, because I think, ultimately countries are their people and not their governments. So I think that that's what you see. If you read the news, you get caught up on perceptions of what people think of, we think of their government and they think of ours. But when you go into a taxi, you go into a restaurant, you get into the street stall, it's people from different cultures sharing something. And I think the love for the United States and the respect and admiration of the United States is as it's been. I'll leave it at the doorstep around how we think about their government or they think about ours. I think that we have a role to play, and as a culture, now put the role we have to play in designing technology and business leadership, and put that to the side. But we are still the leader in music culture, the leader in film and television culture, the leader in food culture. All of those things are influenced by the United States. And I feel like we've got a role to play to really define more of what we share, how we're alike than how we're different. And I think that's another thing I would posit, having traveled now with my family. Before I took on this role, we would have 10-week summers, right? We'd take for 10 weeks and go with a family to Indonesia, or we went to Spain, or wherever we went. We could do that when I was in this transition moment. One of the things that I realized is that my 16-year-old daughter has more in common with a 16-year-old in Japan or in Lebanon or in Ghana than her parents in the same country do, than she has with me or the kids in those countries have. There is an intergenerational bond where they're consuming a lot of the same content, a lot of the same games, a lot of the same media. And those, I think we've got to work on how they can feel like they have shared values, and it's not an us or them kind of winner-take-all approach. I think moving it away from governments and closer to people connecting with people, that should the role, and I think food, personally, I think food plays that role to bring people together.
That's great.
Great. Katie?
All right. Thanks for being here, Dan. It's an inspiring story. If you could build a menu of your favorite items to cook on the Big Green Egg, what would that menu look like?
Yeah, my last meal. I've thought about this. This is one hopefully I'm not on the execution bench here when I do this. So, This is a go through because it's going to be a long meal. First is, and all of these are now the dish I like decide if I like the restaurant or not. So when I go to a tapas restaurant or a Spanish restaurant, I decide based on the pan con tomate, which is bread and tomatoes, the simplest dish, but can be so unique and inspiring with the right ingredients and the right chef. We actually, Fred was here. Fred's got one of the best ones in Atlanta at his restaurant, Iberian Pig. But pan con tomate would be my kind of tapa. Soup would be tom kha gai from Thailand, which is a coconut and lemongrass soup, which there are some amazing ones here in Atlanta. The fact that Big Green Egg's headquarters in Buford Highway was a big draw for me because I get to do my shopping and eating out there, which was happening naturally. My entree, this is where an homage to now live fire cooking around the world, but would be a very simple steak done on live fire, whether that's an Argentine style, a Big Green Egg style, but just over charcoal. I think anything with a bone in it adds more flavor, so I'm a big, bone-in porterhouse or bone-in ribeye, but anything with a bone in it I think is the perfect way to cook a steak, and that is just salt, no pepper. That's one thing that I think people pepper up their steaks, and pepper burns with hot flame. So you want to stay away from pepper, and on high temp grills, keep pepper on for your low and slow. So steak. I would probably turn to China for noodles. I know this is a very ethnic cuisine, but that's how I'd want to do it. And my final, which was the final scene from, I took my 14-year-old to Key West. My video hitting this week was how to make key lime pie. And key lime pie for me is, it's something that I spend my time with my 14-year-old bonding over, like how to replicate that recipe, and was daddy-daughter time that I'll always cherish. So that would be my meal. You're all invited.
Fantastic. So Dan, thank you so very much for being here. Thank you for sharing your words of wisdom, your words around community, your menu as well. Ladies, I understand they have women-only classes that I'm considering.
Yes,
We should
thank
do that
you.
as a group. That would be a lot of fun. And Ed, thank you very much for being here. I hope you enjoyed your first Rotary meeting.
Thank you very much. Visit us. We're right on 285 Global HQ. Come and visit us. And for those 8 people, I've seen your name. I've got your badge. We'll help you out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So please join us next week for Dr. Brian Johnson, Atlanta Public Schools Superintendent. September 1st, there's no meeting for Labor Day, and September 8th, we have Carol Tomei, and September 15th, we have Griffith Lynch, Executive Director at Georgia Ports Authority. So we are adjourned.
Thank you.